thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll get started. I'm Catherine Alford. I'm the Communications Director with New, and I'm so excited to be kicking off Professional Development Week with New. We've been enjoying this week and getting to put together these events, and you guys visit our website. We also have a great blog series going on this week that you can follow along on our website and on social media. So I highly encourage you guys to check it out there. Stephanie and I are going to be talking today about resumes and LinkedIn, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. So feel free to put any of your questions throughout the event in the chat, and we'll get to those at the very end. But it is my pleasure to introduce Stephanie today. Stephanie joins us from Pittsburgh, and Stephanie's career started at the James Martin Center for Academic Renewal, where she researched and wrote about higher education policy. While there, Stephanie participated in the Koch Associate Program. After realizing she was not destined for a policy career, Stephanie joined the Charles Koch Institute, where she served in a variety of engagement and talent development roles, most recently managing relationships with the Institute's over 4,500 educational program alumni. Stephanie is from a small town outside of Eugene, Oregon, and studied political science at Southern Oregon University. She currently resides in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with her partner Promise and two one-eyed cats, Dash and Lady. Thanks so much for joining us today, Stephanie. It's great to have you. We're so excited to learn from you and all about your experience. So yeah, we're going to be talking about resumes and LinkedIn profiles. So we'll just go ahead and start with having working at Talent Market. What is something that helps a resume stand out?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of context about my role now at Talent Market. We are an organization that runs searches for other free market, conservative, libertarian-oriented organizations. And so I spend a very many hours each week reading resumes, getting feedback from hiring managers, kind of seeing all different sorts of approaches, styles, formats of resumes. And I think I would say what stands out the most is when people have taken the time to format their resume and really think about what to include that builds a cohesive and understandable narrative about their career, about the skills that they've built and the work that they're excited to do. And then especially when they have something like a cover letter that comes alongside that and really helps round out that narrative and that story about their career and the work that they're excited to be doing.
Great. So when you look at a resume, is there, beyond just experience, is there a way to kind of stand out from the massive pile of resumes that someone might be evaluating?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard some play on this statistic of hiring managers only look at resumes for 6 seconds, right? I've heard 7 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's a strong sense that you don't have very long to impress hiring managers when you are applying for roles. That statistic isn't super scientifically true,
Okay.
but I think that it's still a helpful idea to keep in mind when you're editing and putting together your resume, because even if a recruiter is spending longer than 6 seconds, they definitely are not going to strain themselves to decipher your resume and understand your experience. So the things that can be really helpful here is making sure that it's a single page. Definitely always a single page for your resume. And then making sure that you have really utilized things like bolding sections, putting really key information in bold or even a different color of text, making the things that you want to stand out and you want hiring managers to immediately notice really easy for them to notice.
Okay. You mentioned the one page. What if you have more experience than what fits on a page? Or if you are trying to fit it on one page, this font is like 8-point font. What do you do about that?
I don't recommend going the like make it really small to stuff things in route.
Okay.
For the most part, the standard across all industries, all sectors of work is 1 page for every 10 years of work experience that you have. And that can feel really painful to people that feel like they've gotten a lot of really strong experience that they're excited about. But again, if you're being really thoughtful, if you're really taking the time to make sure that your resume is a reflection of the things that you're most proud of, that you're most excited for hiring managers to see, a lot of times you can get it on a single page without doing things like pulling the margins all the way out to the very edge or putting it in 8-point font. I think that if you're struggling with this in particular, it starts to be about cutting off less relevant experiences to the specific job you're applying for, making sure that you're taking the time to really tailor your resume to each role or each type of role even that you're applying for. In those instances, you usually have a little bit easier of a time doing a single page. And then this is where LinkedIn can be really helpful because you're not kind of confined to a single page. Your LinkedIn can be as detailed as you want it to be. You can put all of that cool stuff, all of those older accomplishments right there on your digital profile.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I usually say like, take your LinkedIn and then pick the top points that apply to that job and then put them in the resume.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. Should your resume be the same for every job you're applying for?
No, probably not.
Okay.
Tailoring your resume to each job that you're applying for gives you a lot more of an opportunity to make sure that you are putting the things that are most relevant to that specific job. I know that some people have a lot of concerns about automated systems or robots that are scanning through resumes and applications. I don't think you should worry too much about that. But when it comes to tailoring your resume for each job that you are applying for, you can definitely pick key phrases, key skills or experiences from the job description and make sure that wherever you have that specific experience, wherever you've utilized those skills, you're spending more time on your resume, really drawing that out and building that narrative in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I always recommend is like take the job description and make sure all of those points are in your resume if you have them, and then build out the resume from there. Just so yeah, you show how you are qualified for the job by utilizing the job description.
I think unfortunately it's not uncommon where I'll be interviewing a candidate and I'll say, hey, I noticed you didn't have this experience, or I don't think you have as much experience here. And they'll say something like, oh no, I definitely spent a year and a half doing that particular thing. It's just not on my resume. So I think you never want it to be the case where a hiring manager is struggling to see your experience or has to ask the questions in order to find out information that you easily could have put into your resume and really helped them build that knowledge and that understanding of your experience from your resume itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a lot of our attendees on here are a mix of college women and young professionals, but for those that are in college, how would you recommend kind of preparing a college resume for the professional world?
Sure. So I think a lot of times people who are coming out of college get a little intimidated by trying to fill up a full page of their resume, or they're not quite sure what things to keep including and what things to maybe ditch after they finish school. I think that there are a couple of different ways to do this that can be super helpful. Definitely, if you have significant leadership experience from school organizations or significant skills you've gained from involvement in volunteer activities or other things you've done on campus, those don't have to go in your education section. They can absolutely go in your experience section. And you can take the time to really draw out the practical experience that you've gained from work that you've done on campus or through organizations you're involved in. Most of the time, hiring managers will kind of skim through anything that's in the education section. So if it is really significant to your professional experience or things you're really excited to highlight, I actually recommend putting it down in your experience and really helping the hiring manager understand that it is substantive and you did gain really important skills and knowledge throughout those experiences. So I think that's probably my number one tip for people who are just coming out of school.
Okay, interesting. So you kind of touched on this, but leadership opportunities. Many of our women are involved in a conservative organization. However, not all companies maybe appreciate that. So how would you recommend they showcase this leadership experience from being involved in an organization like ours on their resume?
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people stress about this quite a bit, and far fewer people actually say that they feel like it has hindered them in their professional experience, which
Yeah,
is super exciting from my perspective. I love that a
absolutely.
lot of people don't feel like they're having a tough time. I think from what I've seen and what I've gotten feedback on, the things that are most helpful in kind of translating more political or ideological experience to the professional world is to really focus on the hard skills and the broadly applicable experiences that you got. So outside of the specific viewpoints of the organizations you're involved in, you're still really gaining skills in collaboration, probably organizing events, getting people to
Yeah.
work together, all of these things that, regardless of what it was in relation to, are important skills to have coming out of college. And so
Mhm.
I think really highlighting those skills in particular can help kind of get past that fear that the ideology or the mission behind the organization will be a significant hindrance to you.
Well, that's definitely encouraging. But yeah, I mean, we have women on our executive boards who are treasurers, so they're dealing with a budget and communication. So they're learning how to promote and message things to their audience. So absolutely, those hard skills are applicable regardless of what kind of political leaning you were a part of. Um, so I know I was one where I got into my career, thought I was going to be doing one thing, and then decided about a year into my career that actually I have some different kind of something else I want to do with my life. And for someone that wants to make that career shift, how do they draft their resume, or what should they do on their resume to show and make it easier to make that shift?
Sure. So I definitely went through this a couple years into my career, decided I was so on the wrong path. And I really stressed myself out in thinking that, I had built all this experience, I was
Yeah.
on a straight line and I was stuck there forever. The exciting part is that's not true. It's relatively not hard to pivot within the industry or the sector that you're working in. So I'll
Okay.
start there by saying that um, your your baseline skills, things like communication, relationship building, collaboration, you build these early in your career, kind of regardless of what specific type of role that you're in. And those are the baselines for kind of any career path. And so if you're early in your career looking to make a shift, being able to really fall back on those baseline skills and say, hey, I've got broadly applicable experience that I can clearly show you will translate well into this slightly different path that I'm interested in.
Mhm.
That's not too hard to do, as long as
Okay.
you're really helping the hiring manager understand where your past experiences are going to be relevant here. Your cover letter, especially, is super important in helping build this narrative.
Okay.
Slightly different is looking to completely change industries or sectors or having a more significant career shift. those can be much more difficult, but I think the underlying things that you can utilize are very similar. So again, falling back on helping hiring managers see what you already have and how that is applicable. And
Mhm.
then if you have the opportunity and if it makes sense to you in your specific situation, being able to actually talk about how your unique background or your
Mm.
background that looks different from other applicants is actually probably a strength in that you
Absolutely.
bring a different viewpoint or you bring a different set of experiences and skills.
Mm.
And if you can help the hiring manager understand why that might be a strength in the role,
Mhm.
it becomes a lot more interesting and a lot more compelling to that hiring manager to consider you seriously as an applicant.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you have the confidence and the experience to back it up, um, being willing to put yourself out there and explaining that you are consciously trying to make a change, not just
Mhm.
desperate for a job and applying for literally anything.
Yeah.
Hiring managers are open to hearing it and they're
Okay.
open to considering unique applicants. I think you just have to be very aware that that is what you're trying to do, and
Mhm.
make the case for yourself as a strong contender for that kind of shift.
Yeah. And you're doing almost more work and like trying, yeah, like you clearly are almost have to be more passionate about the job that you're applying for than some that are maybe already in the career. So yeah, that's great and definitely encouraging for those who maybe get into what they thought was going to be their lifelong career and realize it's not the right path. There is possibility to change. And I think both of our experiences show that. So kind of switching now to LinkedIn, we touched on this at the beginning, but how do you differentiate your resume from your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely the big one is that you can include everything from ever, basically.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be so long that like you have to click the view more multiple times, right? Because
Yeah.
then it's just a little excessive. But LinkedIn is definitely a place where you can build more of a narrative than you could on your single page resume, and you can
Mhm.
include more things, especially if you have multimedia clips. So, videos of you giving speeches, links to articles that you've published, other things like
Yeah.
that also exist on the web. LinkedIn gives you an opportunity to share those and tie them to specific experiences. And so I think really, in a lot of ways, LinkedIn is just kind of like your supercharged, more detailed, more exciting resume.
Okay. Um, so LinkedIn, we typically use when we're job searching in particular. But what if you don't want to put out there that you are job searching because maybe you are connected with your current office or coworkers? How do you kind of utilize some of the opportunities that LinkedIn provides to job search and network?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I will say is LinkedIn tries hard to not let your current employer know that you might be searching for a job.
Okay.
So things like if you put the open to work tag on your profile,
Mhm.
LinkedIn's algorithm is built so that anybody at your current company should not be able to see that.
Oh,
That's
wow. Okay.
obviously not perfect.
Yeah.
People talk to each other, especially in the nonprofit world. It's a pretty small circle. And so a friend of a friend might see it and tell your boss. That happens.
Mhm.
So I don't think you should just rely on LinkedIn to cover you there. But I think when it comes to broader kind of building your network and being able to utilize that network later on in your job search,
Yeah.
it's really important to build your network, especially on LinkedIn, and engage with that network, especially on LinkedIn, in times when you're not urgently job searching. So using the platform to do things like establish yourself as um, a, a trendsetter or a voice within your specific industry or the area that you practice your career in. Engaging actively with your contacts, congratulating them when they get new jobs, engaging with articles that they post, things like that, that really help you build and maintain your network over time. So that when you are starting to think about your next step in your career and you are starting to look at LinkedIn and try to figure out who might be a valuable connection for you in that regard, you're not showing up randomly on their doorstep after not talking to them for 2.5 years. People are much more willing and likely to help you out if you've maintained relationships over time, if you've built credibility with them. And so I think actively engaging your network on an ongoing basis is the best way and the most consistent way to be able to utilize that network later on when you are in that job search mode.
Okay. At what point do you build a connection? Like you connect with someone on LinkedIn? I know there are people that like I personally know and engage with on a regular basis in my personal life that I'm connected with, but then there's also people like who went to my same college, but we never overlapped, that I still kind of accept just because we have that connection. What would you say if someone was reaching out, wanting to build a connection with someone, what's kind of the appropriate level of connection to reach out?
Yeah. I think there are varying degrees. So people that you have interacted with directly, fellow interns at internships you've done, the staff at organizations you've interned at, members of your chapter, members of New more broadly than your own chapter, people that you have connections with like that, totally makes sense to connect with and to add to your network. If you are connecting with someone that you don't have a very strong relationship with, I always recommend including a message with your request that helps hint at or explain why you're requesting. So that might be something like, it was so nice to meet you at that event. I really enjoyed hearing you speak that one time. I just read an article that you published and I thought it was super insightful. Things like that, that hint to the person that you're intentionally trying to make this connection. And then I think along with this, making sure that you are not making that connection specifically to immediately ask them to do something for you. So if it is an alum from your alma mater, don't just connect with that person to say like, oh, hey, I know we're virtual strangers, but you work at a company that I would like to work with. Will you recommend me? That puts people in really awkward positions of either having to ignore you or say no to you. People don't feel good about that. So I think making sure that it's clear why you're connecting with somebody, explaining that if you think it's not clear to them, probably a super successful way to approach building a broader network on LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that because I get connections all the time of like students that are at my alma mater, but I've never met them and I'm not really sure why they're connecting with me. And so, yeah, I think that makes sense. The message to say, hey, I want to connect because we went to the same school, but I'm also interested in your line of work or whatever. Absolutely. Kind of wrapping up so we can get to our Q&A, but LinkedIn has so many tools, so many things that you can do on it. What are maybe 2 tools that maybe people don't know as much about that you think are great and they should utilize?
Ooh, that's an awesome question. Okay, so 2, I think buckets, maybe not tools. I don't know, LinkedIn lingo maybe perfectly well. One is the summary function. So I have a strong dislike for objective statements in resumes. I think they waste so much space and they're so outdated. But unlike objective statements, the summary section on your LinkedIn profile can be super awesome and super powerful in helping people understand why you're on LinkedIn and what you're excited about. So if you haven't taken the time to build your summary on your profile, I encourage you to do that. And while you're thinking about what to add there, thinking about it as a mix of raw information about you and your experience, plus your passion, the things that get you really excited. And then almost like an elevator pitch to the people who are viewing your profile. So either connect with me for XYZ reason, or I'm excited to connect with people who are practitioners in this industry because this is what I want to nerd out about. I love summaries on LinkedIn. I love reading people's summaries. I think it's such a cool way to start building your personal brand and to really establish your voice on a platform like that. Along with this, I think the other thing people probably don't do as often is join groups and follow really interesting industry leaders or thought leaders in the industries that they're excited about. So if you haven't taken the time to really look at groups that are relevant to your discipline, groups connected to your alma mater, other special interests you have a professional interest in, or follow leaders in your field, speakers that you've seen speak, even companies that you might want to work for one day or you're really excited about. Those are all things that put content directly into your home feed that one is probably super relevant and interesting to you, but two is also a great place to start building yourself as a thought leader or a voice within these industries. So if you're seeing really interesting content or articles or ideas that are being put out into the industry that you're working in, reposting those, adding your thoughts, adding your moments of insight are super easy ways to both engage your network that you have currently and also start establishing yourself as a voice in these conversations. And those are the ways that people who are super influential and super well networked on platforms like LinkedIn specifically get that way. So if you were going to do two things, I would say make yourself a summary and then go follow a bunch of really interesting people and just see what they're talking about.
I love that. That's great. Well, definitely a little pitch, but go follow New on LinkedIn. We're posting some great content this week in particular, but also just kind of a way to stay involved in the network. So hopefully we'll be one of those thought leaders that you were mentioning. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk to you and learn so much that I know I'm going to take away and lots of our women will take away as well.